Right, South Africa's film industry contributed 7.2 billion rand to the economy in 2019, but this was decimated to less than 3 billion over the past year as the Covid-19 pandemic affected productions and travel. According to the National Film and Video Foundation's latest economic impact assessment, a whopping 60% or so of full-time equivalent jobs in the sector were lost. To discuss, we're joined by the Foundation's acting head of operations, Onke Dumeko. Mr. Dumeko, thank you for being with us. So we're talking about 5 billion rand. It's devastating. Just tell us more about the impact on the lives of the artists.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. So it definitely is devastating. And I think if you look at the outcomes of the report, while it gives you those numbers in billions, right, and it shows you that the industry's contribution of the South African economy contracted sustainably by 59%, just to your question, when it comes to the livelihood of the artists, I think you have to be living under a rock not to know how it affected them, right? Because from a process of waiting for funding or grant funding to come in or whatever the case is, the question I think for the artists is what happens then, right? What happens in the waiting period? So if you look at the impact on jobs, if you look at the impact on household income as a whole and what industry practitioners have had to do and have had to do in order to supplement their income and how they've had to pivot when it comes to their respective arts and crafts, it has affected them in insurmountable ways, right? And as the NFEF, we are an agency of government that is really institutionalized to fulfill our mandate of supporting the film industry, which primarily happens through grant funding. And we've done a number of things because of COVID, right, in order to accelerate that process. But we do realize that it's not enough.
Yeah, I was going to say, how much support was there? We know the complaints have been not much. Did it make a difference?
Well, I think it did make a difference, right? Because you have to look at it comparatively. You have to look at it within the context of the industry as we have it now, right? So, I mean, in South Africa, we have a film industry that is yet to be positioned in a way that is yet to be valued and fully understood for the value that it contributes to the economy, right? And I say that because if you have a situation where you have a pandemic, I think the biggest thing with this report is not necessarily to look at the impact, right, of COVID-19, but to look at it and say, okay, retrospectively, 2016-17, this was the impact, right? So this was the contribution of the industry to the economy. And if you look compared to over those 5 years versus the 2020-21 year, you look at that change over that 5-year period, and it's quite a significant decline, right? So over that 5-year period, you're looking at about a 67% difference, right, in terms of the direct, indirect, and induced economic impact of the industry. So over that 5-year period, what does that show you? It shows you that in the 2016-17 period, when we were if you're looking at this period comparatively, you could argue and say that that was the peak. So it shows you the impact that this economy can have. It shows you the value that it can have. And that when you have a situation like COVID, which completely destabilizes something, what needs to be done to ensure that an industry like this is fully insured for any type of scenario such as COVID, because we could be facing such a scenario which doesn't necessarily affect every other industry in the coming years, but could affect the film and video industry in an equal measure as COVID did. So that's the biggest thing. And I think in terms of what the NFEF has done, just to ring fence back to your question, we have executed the presidential the presidential employment stimulus program. We have done a partnership with Netflix, which really was the first of its kind, a micro-budget film partnership with 28 million rand for 6 micro-budget films. We have done a number of other initiatives, such as a drive-in strategy, a 3 million rand drive-in strategy to kind of amplify the consumption of film in your areas where there necessarily isn't a film outlet, right? So we've used the impact of lockdown and how people were subjected to confined spaces to view content to say, okay, well, how can we support the film industry even more? So we did that through that drive-in strategy.
So very quickly, I have to stop you because we're running out of time, and the Netflix stuff is very exciting, the opportunities. But what was the big dent here? I imagine, I know we were becoming a destination for huge foreign films. So I guess you can't do that because of the travel. Was it the local productions as well? And then can the jobs come back quickly if everything opens up?
So the big dent here was definitely the jobs. If you look at the percentage of the decline in the jobs, if you compare 2019 and 2020 to 2020 and 2021, there was about a 59% decline, right? So the big dent definitely was the jobs. Can they come back? They absolutely can come back, right? But that is going to take a number of measures. That is going to take us relooking the way in which we value the film industry and us relooking at the way in which we invest in it. So from a government perspective, there are measures in place that are currently in place, but that requires the conversation to extend beyond that. So that is partnerships with the private sector. That is partnerships that leverage on existing treaties that we have with other countries, where we've signed treaties such as with countries such as your Netherlands, that are geared towards kind of stimulating the film industry, but in a way that is beneficial cross-continentally. So the jobs absolutely can come back, but it's going to take a strategy that is multi-pronged, where we have the functioning of the film industry. We have the functioning of the film industry that works in a way that is not streamlined, but is rather multi-pronged, where the investment in it is coming in from different parts of the economy. Right. And then the return of that investment is defined in such a way where it makes sense for the industry.
All right, thank you so much. And I guess, those production artists are just waiting and hoping, and hopefully those jobs start picking up again. Sure, that was Onke Dumeko, acting head of operations at the National Film and Video Foundation.